$50 million in customer deposits have vanished in the dramatic collapse of a one-time American success story. Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams founded the furniture company that bears their names in 1989. Just over a month ago, it suddenly went bankrupt. Brook Silva-Braga has been looking into how it happened. Good morning, Brook.
Good morning. Well, I'm over here in our green room because it's filled with Mitchell Gold furniture. Stylish, pricey, American-made. It also furnished the Obama White House and TV shows including The Good Wife, Will and Grace, Sex and the City. We were curious how and why a company like that would go under. And what we found says a lot about how the U.S. economy works. Remind me, how long were you working there?
This January, the 16th, would have been 5 years.
But now it's shut down.
Yeah.
For some reason.
The reason is what this story is about. Veronica Wisnet is one of 700 Americans who lost their job when Mitchell Gold went bankrupt. More than half of those 700 live in and around Taylorsville, North Carolina, population 2,300.
Saturday, August 26th, we were sent an email telling us that the business had closed. Essentially, we were without a job.
And I think it said you'd be paid for 2 more months.
Yes, 60 days past when we were let go.
Which is the law.
Yes, but no. Nobody has gotten any money.
People around here must be upset.
Very upset. Yeah, very upset.
How can hundreds of employees get stiffed out of their severance? How can thousands of customers be stuck paying for tens of millions of dollars of furniture they'll never get? How can Mitchell Gold's parent company walk away from those debts, even while it controls nearly $2 billion in assets from the other companies it owns? The simplest way to explain it is probably starting at the beginning.
Well, when Bob and I started the business in 1989, our whole idea was to just have this great little jewel of a company.
Mitchell Gold had been a buyer for Bloomingdale's. His partner, Bob Williams, was a designer. And the furniture they made sold so quickly, they struggled to keep up with demand.
I was a history major in college. I didn't really understand how to finance a business, how to build a business financially. It was very stressful, and it was growing fast, and we had an offer that was very, very attractive.
So in 1999, they sold the business, but kept running it.
So this is the final. This is great.
But every 5 or 10 years, a new buyer took over.
And everything we made kept selling.
And in 2014, with Gold's blessing, the Stevens Group, a private equity company, bought the business. The basic pitch was, you'll get bigger and we'll run you a little better.
Right.
And did it happen?
Not exactly that way.
So let's talk for a minute about what private equity even is. Instead of buying stocks on Wall Street, some very big investors buy whole companies and try to flip them a few years later.
The positive case for private equity, and I'm sort of paraphrasing what their advocates say, is that it's a sort of heat-seeking missile for profits.
Brendan Ballou is no advocate. He's a lawyer with the Justice Department, but spoke to us in his personal capacity as the author of Plunder, private equity's plan to pillage America.
It's a way to use sort of loopholes in our bankruptcy and liability laws to extract the benefits from things when things go well, but essentially walk away when they go poorly.
That's because, Ballou says, they're risking other people's money.
Buying up retailers.
Taking big loans to make the purchase, and then loading that new debt onto the company they just bought.
Yeah, this is a J. Crew suit. It went bankrupt in part because of private equity ownership.
To be clear, many companies bought by private equity grow dramatically, but many others fail completely.
One study found that private equity portfolio companies were 10 times as likely to go bankrupt as those that weren't owned by private equity firms.
Why would you be more likely to go bankrupt?
Because private equity firms both load the companies up with debt, and private equity firms are able to extract money from them. Normally, a company does not want to go bankrupt, or if it goes bankrupt, it's a loser for the owners of the company. That's not necessarily the case with private equity owners.
They've already got their money out of the company.
Exactly.
We have not seen any documents that show whether these practices happened in the case of Mitchell Gold, but here's what we do know. It's a tale of failure played out in 3 acts. First, imperfect management. For years, profits weren't great, so in 2019, Gold turned over the CEO job to Allison O'Connor. But in the face of COVID, her push to improve profits instead led to massive losses. Needing a bailout, the Stevens Group injected $39 million in Mitchell Gold. PNC Bank extended more credit too, and O'Connor, who declined to speak on the record, was replaced this March by Chris Moy.
I still think that we could have survived, and we would have survived.
But the stress of those losses set the stage for Act 2 of the collapse.
The Federal Reserve raised a key interest rate by 1/4 percentage point.
With interest rates climbing, PNC Bank appears to have decided Mitchell Gold was too big of a risk. Moy says the bank declared their loan in default, not for a missed payment, but for missing paperwork that was submitted a couple hours later.
That's what they used to actually drive us out of business. That's a foot fault. And you drove 700 people out of work, and all these customers are going to be damaged because you did that.
In a statement, PNC Bank told us it strongly rejects any suggestion that it caused or contributed toward Mitchell Gold's current financial condition. So then, Act 3. Without the help of borrowed money, would the private equity owners keep Mitchell Gold alive? Moy says he told the Stevens Group they could stage a comeback with about $30 million of additional help. Or, for less than $20 million, they could close the company, but first pay employees their severance and make the furniture customers had already paid for. The Stevens Group declined. Instead, it transferred ownership of Mitchell Gold from North Carolina to business-friendly Delaware, then declared bankruptcy without paying employees or customers.
I loved working there.
Some of those employees and some of those customers are now suing. You've been told you shouldn't speak about this.
I think what the parties would ideally like is for me just to shut up, not say anything, let them have their little bankruptcy, screw everybody, and go on about life. But we had something really special, and now it's destroyed.
And do you think the Stevens Group could have and should have saved it before this happened?
Absolutely.
You must look back at the last 34 years and say, I wish I could have that one back.
Yeah.
And that's what?
I regret selling the company in the first place and losing control.
In response to our questions, the Stevens Group gave us a statement that reads, in part, the Stevens Group has a long history of supporting its portfolio companies, but how the story of any particular company plays out is not always completely within our control. Unfortunately, this is exactly what happened with Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams.
I love how you break this down into 3 acts, almost like it's a play, but these are real people, real lives, and they're out and aren't going to get anything back. What's the latest with the bankruptcy?
Well, there is some news on that because just yesterday afternoon, the Delaware judge converted the bankruptcy from Chapter 11 to Chapter 7. What that means is a liquidation. It means it will be harder for both the employees and potentially those jilted customers to get their money back, and it means the company in its former form cannot come back.
Seems like there's a lot of potential blame to go around here. The owners blame themselves for selling. They blame the bank. They said, listen, it's a paperwork issue. You didn't have to take it this far. But then also the private equity group. They could have saved these jobs. They could have made this furniture. They said, no, we're not going to do it.
It would have been nice in telling this story to say, here's the villain, and just look at this one person and blame them. What it was a confluence of events, the broader economy, the specifics of how this company was managed, and then some people with the ultimate decision, the biggest amount of money in this, decided this was not the gamble they wanted to take, and this wasn't a company they were willing to support through this tough time.
And it's interesting when you hear a company not wanting to expand in this way, and you wonder, but you could go bigger, and you could do this and get this influx of money, but you give up the control.
Yes, and Mitchell says that it would have been hard, but what he wishes he had done was grow slower, find a way to find other funding.
Yeah, 2020 hindsight.
Brooke, thank you so much for that story.